Hi guys, and welcome to the Alt-ernative Podcast. We've got Luemas back on today from Chant It Down. He's here to talk to us about the Maui fires and all the theories and what is actually going on there, because it's quite, I don't know if any of you guys have actually looked into it, but it's quite confusing, the amount of information that's out there about it. I don't know what's misinformation, what is actual real information, but yeah, we've got Luemas on to talk about that today. So yeah, Luemas, what is going on?
For having me on, and it's good to be back. Oh, you guys hear me? There, my mic.
Yeah.
There. Okay. Yeah, it's good to be back, and yeah, it's been a kind of crazy, a really crazy, at least out here, and really worldwide, with weather events and these wildfires, and particularly in Lahaina, Maui, where an entire town of 12,000 perished. And it was pretty shocking to see that happen. Just to give coordinates of where I'm at, is the Hawaiian Islands. There's 8 islands. I'm on the island of Oahu. Oahu has the most people. We have over 1 million. We have a city here and everything, Honolulu. That's where I live. Next door, though, a little ways away, is Maui, and Maui is actually bigger in size and space, but it has multiple towns, and one of them was Lahaina, which was a very touristy town that a lot of people would go see. It's a historic town. It actually was the original capital of the Kingdom of Hawaii before they moved it to this island, and so there's a lot of historic value there. And it's suddenly on August 8th, burned up in an inferno, and there's still still unsure on how many people are missing. There's a lot of missing children. We can talk about that, and there's a lot of things that happen there that are very questionable. And I can go along quite a few things here that'll kind of paint the picture and set the table. But yeah, it was a pretty shocking event. And now with that, we've had other events happen around up in Canada, Turkey, Greece, plus some flooding going on. So a lot of people don't realize that the elites that control our world also have the powers of God, and they can control our weather, and they can manipulate fires, they can make fires, they can do a lot of things with these huge toys they have, and a lot of people don't even know they exist. So for some people, it can be kind of a leap to go into that world, but I'm happy to walk people through it slowly and in a rational manner, and help people to understand the position we're really in on this planet. It at the same time, never feeling discouraged, but only empowered by knowing this information. So anyway, that's a quick little synopsis of what is going on with that. But go ahead, guys. If you have questions, feel free to push them my way about these events here.
Yeah, so my understanding from the mainstream narrative is there was a drought in Maui, and then there was a hurricane or strong winds, which knocked over an electrical cable, which started the fires, and then the winds blew the fires out of control. Is that?
Well, that is sort of the scenario. So when we say a hurricane, there was a hurricane hundreds of miles south of Hawaii. It didn't actually hit here. We had some winds from it, but the very interesting thing, the thing I noticed the day before, when they're saying, well, we're going to have high winds, which might create wildfires. Well, I didn't think too much of it, but one thing that I thought was, so the winds, because the hurricane is south of the Hawaiian Islands, the winds would have been coming from the south. But for some strange reason, the winds were coming from the northeast, which is our normal flow of winds out here. We have what we call the trade winds, and they come from the northeast, and they bring the moisture into Hawaii, and they give us the majority of our rainfall, and that's the normal weather pattern. Well, it didn't change yet the trade winds were ramped up really high. So they said there was a disturbance to the north of Hawaii that created this, but all I saw were winds, or felt were winds from the northeast. And so right there, that didn't make a lot of sense. I was like, why are they coming from the opposite direction of where they say the hurricane is? And well, I didn't think a whole lot of it. I thought, well, maybe they know what they're talking about. I'm just, I just didn't look into it. This is the day before the fires. And then when the day of the fires, I noticed this strange haze in the air. And I thought, that's kind of weird. What is that? Is that salt spray from the ocean, or is it smoke? Didn't really know. But it wasn't like chemtrails. It wasn't like, I had my eyes open for those. They weren't spraying in the atmosphere. So I was just thinking, this is weird, but whatever. But once I got home that day, this was Tuesday, August 8th, my neighbor came out of her house and showed me, did you hear about Maui? And I was like, no, not really. I heard there's some fires. That's all. But then she showed me the whole town burning down. I'm like, oh my God. So this is serious. So I don't know if this is a new technology or not, or what happened, but that haze may have been some kind of fire accelerant that was maybe sprayed. I mean, I'm just going on conjecture here, but the winds and that haze were the two anomalies I noticed. But when we get into the actual pre-fire, I think it's important to understand a couple of things. One of them is our Governor Josh Green, who is a sold out big pharma operative. He's he was the one who brought the vaccine passports here during COVID. And, this guy is working for the dark side. Anyway, he was on vacation. He just happened to be on vacation. And we've seen this before in many events where the main person that in charge just happens to be gone. Well, not only that, the mayor of Maui. And so how it works out here in Hawaii, we have the governor of the state, and each island has a mayor, and the mayor is in charge of the government on each island. So the mayor of Maui is also on vacation. Okay, so and school was canceled due to the high winds. Now, I've been out here where we've had bad storms and they didn't cancel school, and I found that kind of strange. But just to add even more, there were fire marshals that in the town of Lahaina just happened to be out of town that night, and new insurance companies took out new policies before the fire. So you have all these crazy things, and then you have this smart city conference planned later this year, and Maui has been slated as a place they want to start smart cities. So these are all pretty big red flags. These are all interesting things to take note of pre-fire. And then one more thing is who the Maui chief of police is a guy named John Pelletier, that's his name. And he was also the police chief, if you guys remember, the Vegas shootings years back. Was it like 2017 or so? Las Vegas had shootings, and he happened to be the police chief during that too. And we know that story was fabricated as well. People have done great research on that story. So here's this same figurehead they've put in place in Maui, I think on purpose for the event that was about to take place. So you have all those things at the beginning of before the fire that all need to be considered and looked at.
So before the podcast, you mentioned that a lot of children are still missing.
Yes.
And you mentioned then that they cancelled school
Yeah.
the day of the fires.
Yeah. And so they were home. And a lot of people are saying about 2,000 kids are missing. And the mainstream news is saying, oh, only like 200 people died in that fire. And I find that hard to believe. And so there are theories, and well, we can talk about this a little bit about how the alternative media can get out of hand as well. But there are theories that they were taken away in school buses, and there's some evidence to look at that, but who knows exactly. But whatever the case is, so many people died in this fire, and this could have been prevented. So I guess as we move along the story, the fire erupts in the and there are some people that say it was started by an electrical fire. It's possible, but it seems like it behaved a lot different than a regular fire. But the important thing to note is they blocked people from leaving the town. So here we have the police blocking off the main road out, and they wouldn't let anybody in or out. And people in this long line of traffic got incinerated in their cars. And so they were just following orders, which is one of the worst things in our society, is people who just follow orders without question. And we have a lot of that, and that's why we have wars. I mean, you can put that on many things in our society, people just following orders. Well, here's, cops that are blocking the road while there's and the water was shut off too, by the way. So there was no water for the fire hydrants, and yet the electricity was still on. So that's pretty crazy. Now, one thing that we have out in Hawaii is what we call the civil defense system. Basically, what it is an alarm system that lets off once a month our fire drill. So that would be like the first business day of every month. It sounds like an air raid, and what it's for is for natural disasters, tsunamis. If you look on the website, it states it's for tsunamis, hurricanes, floods, wildfires. And so the alarm was not set off. And that is also a big red flag, because I've been in situations years back. I was dating a girl that lived near the ocean, and we had a tsunami watch warning. They thought we were going to get a tsunami because an earthquake happened somewhere in the world. And so the cops came through the neighborhood with bullhorns and said everybody has to get to higher ground, as well as the alarm system went off. So you think of that, and then you look at what happened on Maui. Why didn't they do the alarm? And the excuse that the person in charge said is that he didn't want everybody to run toward the mountains, because that's where the fire might be more, he didn't want people to get confused that it was a tsunami. But we all know out here that they use that alarm system for more than tsunamis. And if they had if the police would have actually gone through and bullhorned everybody, a lot of lives would have been saved. So you could blame it on negligence. And I would say Hawaii does have a lot of negligence. Hawaii's not a place that's very organized. I mean, we have a very, it's like Hawaii had to become civilization, so it did, and people didn't really like out here, things don't work real smooth. So you could blame it all on that, but I highly doubt it, considering all the other facts surrounding this, that I just have a hard time believing it's all negligence, because they know the drill. They know that system, and people just burned alive in this. And so, yeah, I mean, the reaction to the fires is the other big red flag in this, besides some of the pre-fire stuff, is the reaction to why they didn't let anybody leave Lahaina, and why they didn't have any alarm or any sort of warning for the people to get out. And so it appears like they were just following orders, but who was giving these orders? We have to look at why they operated the way they did. And it certainly seems very suspicious, as we can get into in a little while here, the anomalies with the actual fire. But yeah, that was just really crazy to see that they didn't even have an alarm or anything.
What was the reason for them not allowing anybody to leave? What reason did they give?
Well, that's it. They just said they were following orders. That's just what their orders were.
That's it.
Yeah, that's it. Yep.
And nobody higher seniors answered that question.
Not really. No, they just they figured that they were keeping the people safe is what they thought they were doing, because they figured that their uppers were telling him exactly what the best thing is, and obviously it wasn't the best thing. And I don't know how these cops can live with themselves right now. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if one of them, they suicided themselves, because I mean, how many lives that were killed? And then you got to question, who were these officers? I don't know who they were. They could have been not our actual officers. And a lot of these situations, they do bring in these actors. You've heard of it before, and it's quite possible. I used to not buy into the crisis actor thing, but the more I've looked into it, the more it seems possible, especially with the Maui police chief being the same chief from the Vegas shootings.
Did any of those police officers die, or is there any reports of any of them?
No, I don't think so. No. Yeah, but the head of security for the alarm system resigned immediately. So
when you talk about the pre-fire, and one of the things you mentioned was a meeting regarding smart cities in Hawaii. What's your reason to believe that these wildfires are connected to smart cities?
Well, one of them is that this is, first of all, this property, Lahaina, is valuable for elites. Let's talk about Maui for a sec too before we get into that. Maui is where a lot of the rich elites, like Oprah, like Jeff Bezos, like quite a few people. I can't think of some of the other people. I know Lady Gaga has property there. A lot of them have gone there. I would say it's our second prettiest island out here. It's a pretty nice island. There's a lot of very diverse, different climates on it. And, it's quite a unique island, but that property is very valuable, and locals have held on to it for years. And so because they've held on to it for years, these elites have had no way of acquiring that property. But these new insurance things and policies have come in. I think it was the governor who signed this in, that said that in the case of a natural disaster, that the government can seize that land. And so that is also a red flag too, I think, because they could take this property and use it for whatever they like. So with the idea that a lot of these elites live on Maui, Maui's the most sold out island, in my opinion, in many ways. I mean, no offense to the people who live there, but as far as like the amount of locals there's very few. It reminds me of a suburb of California somewhere in a lot of places. When I go to the other islands, I still feel like there's locals, but there is not. So it has been taken over, very gentrified. And what was your question? Why do I think that these are slated for smart cities? Or
what do you believe the connection between let's call them man-made wildfires to their plans of setting up smart cities within Hawaii?
Yeah, well, and I'm not certain, but like for they did want to do a smart city conference, and they do want to put Maui on the list of places for smart cities. And it's interesting to note that these fires have been happening in places where they want to put smart cities. For example, a while back, there was the Paradise, California fires, and they wanted to put this high-speed train through that whole area. Well, now they have the chance. They haven't, but it's just that the elites can seize land like this, and I think that's their idea, is to take land, and then that is less places for people to live. And maybe the bigger picture, some people might think, is to keep on burning out places to where people are forced to live in these smart cities because they don't have any other choice as the world goes more and more like that. But they have a lot of work to do because it's nowhere near that right now. I mean, where I live, I can't even imagine this area becoming a smart city or even a 15-minute city. But they do want to do that. I mean, and we're on an agenda here. 2030 is the agenda, and they are ramping it up. And as I talked about in the last interview with you guys about climate change, this is one of the things that unifies the globe. This is the thing that they can try to get everybody on the same page with. And I think why they're doing these fires, and we'll get into more of possibilities of how they're doing them, but why they're doing these fires is to also show people, to convince people that we need to give up our freedoms and live differently, because climate change is out of control and it's rampant now. And so they're pushing this climate change with their weather weapons, and it always has been. The real climate change is with chemtrails, HAARP, and all these different ionospheric heaters and their toys that are messing with our environment. It's not that the actual climate is really changing, and plus the climate's always changing because planet Earth always has cycles as is. So, I mean, there's a lot to that. I could, I don't know if I said this on your last show, but I guess if people need to hear it again, where climate change came from is a document by the Club of Rome. And I don't know, did I go over this on your last show? I can't even remember.
I don't think we went into depth. I think you mentioned it, though.
All right. Well, let me just read you guys something real quick here. And it's just a little blurb from the Club of Rome in 1971 document. And it talks about, this is the very beginning. And back in these days, they were telling people that the Earth is going to go to a new ice age. So all their predictions have been wrong. New York was supposed to be underwater by 2015, and so their track record is terrible. So I think a lot of people are starting to see that, but they're really trying to ramp this climate change up because they can unite the world under one thing. Just like COVID, this is the other one that they're using that is going to be able to, unite the world. So here it is. So this is called The Limits of Growth. It's a 1971 book. And this is a little blur from it here. It says, the common enemy to humanity is man. In searching for a new enemy to unite us, we came up with the idea that pollution, the threat of global warming, water shortages, famine, and the like would fit the bill. All of these dangers are caused by human intervention, and it is only through changed attitudes and behavior that they can be overcome. The real enemy, then, is humanity itself. We believe humanity requires a common motivation, namely a common adversary, in order to realize one world government. It does not matter if this enemy is a real one or one invented for the purpose. So, that's like, they're just telling you right there, they doesn't matter if it's a real one or one invented for the purpose. So that's where this whole thing came from. And when you go to that, and you think about it, then, people don't know that. And it's important to know where this came from. And it's important to understand that they're changing the weather all the time with these programs and messing up the weather. I mean, yeah, the weather is weird. Everybody can agree with that. But if you don't understand that they have the powers of God, or they think they do, then they can, manipulate the weather in such a way that people will go, oh, yeah, climate is changing. We got to do something now. Okay, we'll give up our freedoms. We'll all drive electric cars and get carbon credit points and all that shit. And that's just the beginning. They want the world to be like China. They and beyond that, really. So right now they're working on getting the rest of the world caught up to that. And since COVID, they have been pushing all these various things to get us QR coding and cashless society and 5G and all that stuff since COVID, and it was an excuse to roll out this tech. So it's the agenda is pretty heavy right now, and I think more and more people are waking up to it, which is a great thing. But we can talk about too some of the dangers of the alternative media now too, with too many theories going on. But we'll get into that later. But I'm sure you guys have some questions and stuff. So
yeah. When you mention the smart cities, so earlier in summer, there was some fires in Greece on an island called Rhodes, and I remember doing some reading about it because I'm actually supposed to be getting married there next year. Yeah, so when the fires were going on, we thought, what's going to happen? Is it where we're going to get married, going to get burnt down? Or so I was doing some research into it, and the area that got set on fire was a national reserve, so like a nature reserve. But the government have plans to turn Rhodes into a smart city, or Rhodes Island into a smart city. But they couldn't develop on this land because it's classed as a natural nature reserve. So once it got burnt down, it's no longer a nature reserve because everything's dead.
And now it's going to be a smart city.
Yeah, so I think they're going to put developments there now.
Yeah. Yep, that makes sense, and that aligns with everything else that's going on. I forget the name of the place that was in Western Canada, but same thing. And people said no to it, but it looks like they are making these fires. And that is a stretch of my thinking. Like at first, everybody's screaming, DEWs, that these what do you call them? The laser weapons are causing these fires. And whenever everybody's screaming something, I always want to check it for myself. And I think everybody should. And this is what I was talking about, how the alternative media can be kind of a little bit carried away. And I think that intelligence agencies might put out stuff on purpose too, on our side of things. And really, like, if you ever notice when these events happen, whether it was COVID, these fires, 9/11, whatever, there's such an oversaturation of information that you can't even really get to the truth, because you're like, you can't even figure out what's true in all this, because there's just too much coming out. I think that sometimes they do that, that possibly people that are well-meaning also feed into it too, but they oversaturate with different theories out there. And we have to be very critical even with the alternative media. So for example, they were showing pictures of a directed energy weapon coming down, and really what it was is someone zoomed in to a rocket launch, and it was the exhaust from the rocket launch, but it looked like a laser beam basically. And so people were zooming in on that, or somebody originated it, and it got out on social media and as a picture for directed energy weapons, when it's not a directed energy weapon. So there's stuff like that floating around. And then of course the other side of that too is you tell people that these fires are manipulated, and you say to your average normie, yeah, it was directed energy weapons. I mean, how much of a nutcase are you going to sound like when you say it was directed energy weapons? So I think the alternative media needs to be careful on how they just put this stuff out there, because most people can't grasp that concept. It has to begin, baby steps. And because it's not, it makes a lot of us look stupid when really we're just questioning. So I never came out saying it's directed energy weapons, but it could be. And with, and I saw this video, it was like, I don't know, last week, this kid in his garage made a laser that can start fires instantly with things. And if he can do that, then they can definitely do that with these weapons. So it is possible. And it seems like these fires have a lot of anomalies. There's there is some truth to that. I mean, like, for example, in Lahaina, there were cars that had been melted. The aluminum was melted into a liquid next to trees that are still growing. Or there'll be like picnic benches under the big banyan tree in Lahaina that's famous that are still there. And so it's like the fire chose where to go, and that's very interesting that it did. And of course, it didn't hurt a lot of these elite homes and rich places. It basically burned out the locals. So you got to think that there must be some technology that they can steer a fire. We don't know, and I like to say that I don't know. We don't know enough, but there's certainly anomalies to how this fire burned and to how many degrees burned. There were actually 2 fires on Maui, I should mention, and the other fire was not as big, but it was on another part of Maui where my friend lives. And my friend and his girlfriend felt like they had been microwaved. They felt weird for days. And so they ate a bunch of seaweed and stuff to kind of like cleanse themselves. And, they felt weird. So some kind of weaponry happened during this fire, I'm pretty sure. But then you get to the extreme part where you got people saying that these fires don't burn blue colors because of the electromagnetic frequency or whatever that they're talking about. So then you have some people dyeing their hair blue so they won't get burned by a directed energy weapon. And that's about as stupid as anybody that believes in climate change, that we're all going to die in 12 years, or as stupid that, COVID is coming from climate change, or, any of these. I mean, so that's what I mean when we say the alternative media kind of has gone awry, and maybe these are disinformation agents. So I think that we just have to be very careful with what we're all saying, and be careful with how people hear this information, because certainly they're going to turn off when you tell them it's lasers from space. So, but maybe it is lasers from space, but no one has a picture of lasers from space actually making these fires. It could be done in a number of ways, smart meters possibly.
I think with these kind of things, like you've put together everything, basically what happened before the fire, their plans for what they want to do to Maui, and then the fire happening. You can explain that to someone and say, it all seems a little bit suspicious. And then you don't have to say directed energy has come and burnt Maui. Like, you can't, to a normie, like that just sounds like, whoa, that's a bit crazy. But if you explain the whole situation to them and raise your suspicions, they might start questioning things in their head, and then start looking into it a bit further, and then open their minds to what potentially could have happened.
Sure. I agree. I think that people will just go, wow, that sounds like a land grab. Then at least that's kind of what it is. So we can just look at it until we get further information that we know it was caused by lasers from space. Let's just say it's a big land grab to make a smart city. And really, that's not that far of a stretch, really, to think about.
Yeah, because do you know much around the money that these locals are getting supported by?
Yeah, Biden gave them $700 each.
Right, yeah, that's what I heard.
That's nothing. I mean,
That's
Hawaii's
insane.
expensive anyway. We're more expensive than the rest of the United States. $700 is not even probably a month's worth of groceries. It's just pathetic.
So that's what makes me believe that this is just purely a land grab. Everything's pointing in that direction because it's to get the locals out of there, or at least into these 15-minute cities if they do decide to stay.
Right. And I guess maybe another thing to think about, to know about Hawaii, is this has been happening for years in other ways, maybe not with fires, but they've always been trying to get the locals away from property and buy them out. And because the locals here are a mix of ethnicities, but we have the original native Hawaiians, who are the largest indigenous landowners in the United States. And they have some of the most prime land. Hawaii's got some limited space and land, and these local families that have held on to these properties through generations, we're not going to give them up. So there's always been this battle to take away the Hawaiian lands, and they've been doing it pretty successfully ever since the beginning of colonization here, and it's continued on. But this is a very extreme one. And the person who's in charge here, Josh Green, I should mention, is attends World Economic Forum meetings. So he's not just some guy people elected out here. This guy is bad news. And I never knew governors and premiers could have so much power until COVID happened. And I always thought they were kind of lower level, just Joe Schmoes that you got in there. But then I found out about the Young Global Leaders program, which the World Economic Forum has. So these key people have been placed in many positions around the world for these events to occur, especially since COVID. I mean, we've seen these governors and premiers and health ministers get away with so much ridiculous stuff, and they got totally away with it too. Nobody got arrested, and they're still active out there, causing problem for every single country, especially in the Western world.
When did he become the governor?
This year. Yeah, beginning of this year. And he was a lieutenant governor before. So he was really like our old governor's handler. He's a doctor. He's Dr. Josh Green. And the funny thing about this guy is he shows up everywhere in his scrubs. He's not a practicing doctor. He'll show up at like some fake car crash, and they'll have him in his scrubs as if he just saved somebody's lives. And that was all campaign stuff that they did to get him elected. And people in Hawaii, I'm going to be honest, and people may not like what I have to say, but a lot of people in Hawaii are dumbed down. They don't understand. They elected this guy in because, they thought, oh, Dr. Josh Green will do us great since we just came out of a pandemic. So a lot of people here are pretty gullible, and unfortunately they voted him in. However, these days you don't know who was placed in and put in. You don't even know if they actually won the election. But a lot of people had signs up for him, so I figured, they actually let this guy in. And he said as soon as he got elected, I come from a family of radicals. And sure enough, he gave us the vaccine passport here. I wasn't even able to go anywhere except go to the grocery store during that period because I didn't want to get that injection. And so it's the same guy in power. And I think he was placed here for these specific events.
Yeah, because it sort of everything points in that direction, because when you map it out the way you've mapped it out, it just looks plain and obvious, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
One of my thoughts when I first heard about it, and I heard about lasers from space, I thought, is this the start of Project Bluebeam?
Ah, right.
Yeah, that was what I think, because there's a lot of stuff in the news about UAPs.
Well, Mexico just released an actual video of what they are calling an alien. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, so that's another one. See, the world's gone crazy in the last few months. We had in our Congress, military people. I'm sure you saw they had the explaining that UFOs and aliens exist in front of Congress, which is the first time in history. And although I went through that and really fine-combed it, I did a show on it. It's possible that those pilots are really seeing these things. I'm not even saying they're not, because I've seen UFOs a lot too. But all this is like this steady drip behind the scenes. They admitted during COVID that UFOs are made off this planet, they're not from this earth, little things here and there. And I think this is something that they are going to bring out when it's time. Maybe when their climate change stuff just isn't catching on enough, not enough people believe in it. Their track record is really bad. I mean, since COVID, nobody really believes the media and government anymore. So I would say sooner or later they're going to release this. And those guys in Mexico, I mean, we're just tainted, all of us. We don't. It's like we need more proof than that. I mean, that could it looks fake, and it probably is. But I mean, I not that I don't believe in life out there, but I just think that they're controlling that narrative for a possible Project Bluebeam. I mean, or something of that nature. That's the biggest card they can play, though. So once they go there, unless they, start a nuclear war, that's about as big as a card that they can play as far as an Earth-changing event is. Have like aliens land down on all the government front lawns or whatever. So they better be doing that one right, or they're gonna lose, really. I mean, there's a lot of people now that just don't believe anything that they say, and for good reason. And I get it.
Well, that leads to quite a simple but important question. Like, if you look at everything in the mainstream media or everything that the government is saying, do you believe it's all to support an agenda, or is there actual stuff that we can still believe from them at this stage?
I think it's maybe like a 70-30 thing, where if once in a while they put out the truth and you're like, but you wouldn't know if it was the truth. So again, going back to the alternative media, we're all tainted, and I get it, but we also have to realize sometimes they might be saying the truth. Those military guys might not be lying to us, but what they decide to do with that could be really bad. Who knows? I don't know, but once in a while they'll tell us the truth, but we're not going to believe that because they've lied to us so much. So I think there's a mix of things, and we really have to be able to entertain something, put it on the back burner, and not just throw it in a neat little pile. We have to just let it be there until we find a place for it, rather than just dismissing every single thing that comes our way. Because when we do that, I think we start getting into a black and white polarized thinking, throwing out the baby with the bathwater, and that's also not good. So kind of have to keep open mind to everything at the same, and critically think at the same time. It's a tricky thing for a lot of people to do, because we want to put everything in a neat little cute package that works, but sometimes we don't know. And I like to be able to just sit there. The more I've been into this information, which is, I'm coming up on like 23 years of knowing all this to a degree, and paying attention, the less I know. And it's kind of like, well, I don't want to be one of those people going out there saying this is the way that it is, because a lot of times that doesn't go anywhere good. We have to really be nuanced. And the more I've been getting into this information, the more nuanced I realize I have to be, because if we're going to believe everything's a lie, then we can miss out on some truth, and vice versa. Yeah.
The fires in Maui, are they still ongoing today, right now?
No,
they've stopped.
They put them out. Yeah.
What's the sort of word on the street around in Hawaii? What's
a lot of people are believing it's a land grab. A lot of people are believing it, and surprisingly, a lot of the witnesses there are believing it's directed energy weapons. You can actually go to the community meetings, and you'll have people yelling on microphones at some of the officials saying this was not a normal fire. And so I believe them. They were there, but that's quite a leap, because I'm assuming most of these people didn't know about any of this stuff before. So surprisingly, the general consensus in my world here is that a lot of people are saying it was the people that aren't believing in the mainstream narrative are saying it was directed energy weapons. They've gone to that extreme. And then the other people are saying it was climate change. And even the governor, of course, came out and said, I'd love to apologize for all this, but you can't apologize for climate change until we change our behaviors. And what did it say in that document I just read? It said change of behavior. That's funny. He said that straight out of the textbook.
Are you seeing more people waking up now in Hawaii after this event?
At least to this event. But it's kind of weird how some people like that are screaming that still believe that COVID was a pandemic, So it's kind of weird how they can choose one thing and go real deep with it, but not take another thing and go real deep with it. So that's kind of what I'm seeing, kind of a mixed match of things. But one thing Hawaii does have in its favor is that it does not trust the government, because it was taken over here a long time ago illegally. So it doesn't take much for locals here to say that the government is not trustworthy. And at least for the Hawaiians who've got the shit into the stick here. The Hawaiian people, there's not that many actual real indigenous Hawaiians. There's less than 6,000 full-blooded living. Most people are mixed in Hawaii with many cultures. But those real Hawaiians, most of them live in poverty. A lot of them have drug problems, alcohol, or in prison. So yeah, those people are not about to trust the government. And when they can, even if they're not looking at the information we look at, they will definitely jump on something that doesn't trust authority here, for sure.
I'm going to ask, it's not nothing to do with the fires, but can you give us a bit of a background on Hawaii and why it's part of the United States? It's something I've always wondered, because it's quite far away from the United States, isn't it?
Yeah. 5.5 hour flight and you get to the West Coast. So it is pretty far out here in the middle of nowhere.
It's 5.5 hours away from the US.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. It's a long trip out here for even Americans. It's a state because, first of all, the sugarcane industries here. A long time ago, sugar barons came out here, grew sugar, and they actually purposely got rid of the kingdom out here by framing the queen. And the reason why they did so was they wanted to get rid of the kingdom so they wouldn't be taxed on sugar exported out of here. So that was kind of the beginning of the downfall of Hawaii, was the sugar industry and the pineapple industry. And later in history, well, actually the whole time, you can go back to World War I, the military was out here. The military's had control of Pearl Harbor since 1888. So the military came out here because it's a port for defense against Asia. And so they always had their forces out here. And then when Pearl Harbor happened, and I'm giving you a very like quick history lesson here, not like detailed, but when Pearl Harbor happened here, this was a territory of the United States, not a state. And because it was, a lot of people here felt like they sacrificed so much of their lives for the United States, but they weren't getting the benefits of actually being a state of America. At least some people here voted in to become a state in 1959. So it is America's newest state. So it hasn't been around really all that long, because I still know people that grew up here when it was a territory. So it's very different culturally than the rest of the United States. And it's just got the name of a state, but in reality, it's like a different country out here. And it was acquired through illegal sugar barons and then later the US military. And they use it today still as a defensive port. We have the largest collection of American military assets in the world out here. So we're a major hub out here for military. Yeah, so that's why we're a state. We're part of the country by, it's a stolen kingdom, essentially, is what it is. We had royalty here. We had 8 Hawaiian monarchs, and then it was taken over.
Is there much talk or any support for Hawaii to become independent again?
There's been many. Yeah, there's sovereign nationalist groups out here. However, they're not very organized. A lot of them are just kind of like screaming with picket signs, but it never gets anywhere. And I don't know if really Hawaii could stand on its own. I mean, I feel like if it didn't get taken over by the United States, Japan would have just took it over during World War II. So I really don't think that Hawaii would have a fair chance as a kingdom, but it deserves to be sovereign. I agree. I'm not big on kings and government and authority anyway. It was, even when it was a kingdom, it was not run that great, but better than what it is now. I would imagine the kings wouldn't allow all these elites like Oprah and Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg out here to own land. But that's what Hawaii's become, is this playground for the rich out here now. It's no longer it's like all these big names out there that are the richest people in the world live out here, except for what's his name? Elon Musk. But otherwise, every rich person I can think of that has a lot of money, Steven Spielberg, they all live out here, they all have homes out here. So yeah, it's become it's basically it's kind of a crazy place, because you have the very extreme rich and then you have the very extreme poor. And if someone wants to see that in the audience out there, you check out my YouTube, which is Truth Filled Trajectory. I did this little series of videos where I did a dash cam and I just drove around the worst areas of Honolulu. Checked out, you checked that out? Yeah, yeah, and just seeing the opposite of what you would say is paradise here, homelessness and all that. So it's kind of it's a place of many perspectives out here. It's an interesting place. A lot of people don't know a lot about it. Even Americans, very few Americans know really the history of Hawaii, why we're a state, and what life really is like out here. We're full of different ethnic groups that were brought in here to work in sugar and pineapple. And so Hawaii's probably one of the most mixed cultures in the world too. Many people here, many ethnicities.
I think what I can say from obviously living in the UK, Hawaii's marketed as a paradise for the rich. Really, we don't really hear much more about it apart from
just what you see in films, and they're always on holiday in Hawaii in movies.
It's a beautiful place, and I think there's some energetic levels to Hawaii. There's some ley lines out here that are important. It's always attracted, people from all over. So there is a special energy out here. And that's why I've noticed a lot of the PowerPoints on the Hawaiian Islands have been taken over by the US military. We have some point, like on this island, Kaena Point, it's a sharp point that sticks out to the west. And there's all these radar stations on top of it. It's almost like maybe they're stopping the natural energy of these points that had spots like you guys have in the UK. You have a lot of energy spots too, especially like Stonehenge and Avebury Henge. We have some of that out here too. And so these PowerPoints, I think, are being absorbed or taken away by the military at the top level that knew these were these spots and these ley lines, and they're probably messing with the energy of it, because it does feel like Hawaii had a lot more harmony at one time. I mean, this is what my intuition feels, and it got taken by people out here, the elites and the military, and take that sort of harmony out here. At one point, that energy has been taken. Now it's not that it's bad. I mean, you come here, people still love the energy of Hawaii, but I think it was even a deeper place than it used to be. Yeah,
I can see that. Yeah, 100%. So I've got a bit of a weird question in a sense, but so
don't worry, I like weird questions.
Yeah. See, I'm putting together pieces of the jigsaw as we're having this conversation. And at the beginning, obviously, you talked about a lot of missing children due to the fires.
Yeah.
And then you also talk about a lot of elites living on the island. Do you see a connection there at all?
Yeah, I think that although these elites, when I say elites, we don't even know who they are, but the elite that we can see, like Oprah's and and
The low
Mark
level
Zuckerberg's,
elites.
and low level elites, I'm sure they're in the club, so they're probably in on this for sure at one level or another, even if they think it's good for the climate or something. Maybe they just bought into it. But I would say when you're at the level of making money like Jeff Bezos, that you are part of this plan to some degree or another. So yeah, I'd say so.
Do you know when you mentioned you saw UFOs? Did you see
Yeah.
them watches in Hawaii?
Yeah, I have. I've seen quite a few. I mean, too many stories to name. I do so what I so okay, actually, uh this is going back about 2 years ago. I was on um Mark Palmer Steve's My Family Thinks I'm Crazy. You guys know that podcast?
Yeah.
I did an episode with him and I talked about my UFO story that I had in 2000. And then I came out, no, it was the next day, sorry. The next day afterwards, and I'm looking up at the sky and there's this glowing orb just stationary in the sky, like flashing, like this white orb. I did a YouTube video on it. I used my footage. It's not great. It's from my phone. And this started a whole chain of events. So this is just one story, but this started a whole chain of events. So I made that video. And then a month later, so this is January of 2022, to put in perspective. February of 2022 on the island of Kauai, there was a UFO sighting, an object spotted. So they scrambled military jets and they go up there and they go, oh, it's just a weather balloon. Okay, but they didn't know whose weather balloon it was. And then in the following month, March of 2022, the news says, if you see any strange objects in the sky, they're just weather balloons. This company, I forget what they're called, let out 2 weather balloons here on Oahu. And so I looked up in the sky and I saw what they're talking about, these weather balloons. And they were indeed balloons. They were kind of, floating around like they do in the wind. And I was like, that's not what I saw. But it was really strange because here are these balloons. It's almost like they're covering up for the video I made. I don't know. Or, maybe not just the video I made, because other people may have saw that original UFO. So this was 2022. Now you go back to, I guess it might have been later last year when we had that Chinese spy balloon come over America. And then they said they shot down 3 objects. They never told us what they were, but they shot down these 3 objects. And I'm just wondering, like, what is all this, And I've tried to make sense of it. Like, what I saw indeed was some kind of high technology. Not saying it was aliens. I don't know. But it was very strange. It went all over the skies and moved very, very different than anything I've ever seen. And here then we have later on this Chinese spy balloon, which was a stupid story. As we can, like the military actually shot it down with a missile. It's like they wasted like $400,000 shooting one, or $1 million shooting a missile through a balloon when they could have just shot it down with like a machine gun or something. But anyway, they waited till it went all the way through the United States to the Atlantic coast and then shot it down. Weird. And I don't know, again, this might lead into what this whole UAP rollout. It may just be this drip programming that they want us to hear about these objects and just kind of get used to the idea. I really don't know, but that UFO I saw was genuine in January of 2022, and I thought it was very strange. And I had actually let Mark know that the day after I did that interview. I said, I saw another UFO. Can you believe it? And he's like, he thought it was pretty funny. But yeah. Wild, huh?
That's crazy.
Yeah. But we have a lot of military out here, and so you have to think too. But so I bought these they call zero gravity chairs, and they fall all the way back so you can just look at the sky. And that's what I do now. I sky watch, and I've seen so many strange anomalies up there, so many weird things that couldn't be satellites. And so we got a lot going on up there, whether it's our own stuff, a mix of both, I don't know. It's definitely, there's stuff going on in the skies, and I recommend everybody watch the skies. There's more going on up there than ever before. It's just that most people don't watch the skies, they're busy with life. I get it, but there's a lot up there, besides chemtrails. There's some crazy stuff going on up there. Satellites that suddenly shut off their lights, or flash at you. There's all kinds of weird stuff going on up there.
Yeah, I was walking back from the town centre here. Must have been about midnight, and it was a clear. Like, I've not seen it this clear in England for a long time, and I've never really looked into the sky before. And I was walking with one of my friends, and he was basically just telling me some stories about the stars. And as he was telling us, and I must have looked into the sky properly maybe 3 or 4 times in my whole life, which is weird to say, but it's true. And I shit you not, we actually saw like it was a light that beamed across. It looked really, really far away, beamed across, and I was like, must just be a shooting star, right? And he was like, maybe you'll be surprised though with what goes on with the sky. And he goes, just keep looking. And we just stood there and we just kept looking, and then it beamed back the other way, and I was like, what? But then nothing else happened that night. But we can, if you look long enough, you can see the stars like sort of moving, very very.
Yeah. Yep.
So that only happened, was it like 2 or 3 weeks ago now? So it piqued my interest into looking into the sky more from that.
Yeah, you should. I know it's getting cold and you might get a lot of rain, but when you get a clear night, it's totally worth it. When we were sitting out one night, I saw 8. I don't know how to describe it. It's basically like a orb came out of a visible hole in the sky and went into another hole. 8 of them, one after the other, like almost like basketball hoops coming through, and into invisible basketball hoops, just like these bright balls going. We're like, what the hell was that? So we don't know. And so I know that they have a lot of technology, and there's talk of the secret space program, and I'm pretty sure that is a real thing. When the Nazi scientists broke off, they gave us NASA, which is a facade, and then we got a real program going on up there with who knows what doing who knows what. There's so much to speculate on that, but certainly the skies are not boring, and more than ever there's more stuff up there. No doubt there's more satellites than there ever has been before, but I've done enough homework to know what a satellite is, and then know that these things are not behaving like satellites, at least some of them. And so there's some strange things going on up there, and I think that more and more people should be looking at the sky and just starting to document it, because we're living in those times that the whole dark world that used to be made fun of is now like coming out into the real world and emerging, and people, more and more people are starting to see it.
Yeah, it's yeah, we're living in a crazy time. Why do you think there's so much action in space right now? Do you think it's because, well, like you said, they've got the technology? We know they've got the technology. They say, what do they say? The technology they have, we won't see for 50 years. So we know they've got the technology. Do you think they're fully immersed in space at this moment in time? Because from what we know, we have today, sort of thing. So what the normies know we have today, I can see in 50 years' time we should be a lot more active in space. So do you think they are currently a lot more active than obviously they're letting on in space.
Yeah, I do. I think so. I think they've been active up there for a long time too. I mean, whether or not we as humanity merged with some ET technology, reverse engineered their craft and got some of their technology, it's possible or not. We're definitely there's this technology that is being created that is almost unworldly, and it keeps on getting more sophisticated and sophisticated. And you have to ask, well, where is that coming from? Why hasn't it plateaued for them? I mean, our phones came out pretty exotic at first, and now they're just kind of the same thing every year. There's not much else they can do with it, but they're not giving us hardly anything. They give us those phones so they can track us, and a lot of the technology that we got anyway, it comes from DARPA, and DARPA is, an arm of the Department of Defense that has been developing weapons and crazy inventions for a long time. I think everything we're using right now is from DARPA. The internet, our cell phones, GPS, it's all from DARPA. And also the technology that came from the COVID shot is DARPA. So there's some crazy underground bases here on this planet that I'm sure they're developing all kinds of stuff that is, at least like you said, 50 years ahead, if not more. And asking the bigger question, did it come from a more advanced race? It's quite possible. I mean, I know there's a segment of the alternative media that dismisses that aliens exist, and it even dismisses that space exists at all. And I think I think I recognize where these things are coming from, and I respect the questions and the critical thinking, but sometimes I think it gets taken a little too far. I mean, if you look at any of our ancient cultures on this planet, they all talk about returning someday, whether it's the Egyptian pharaohs, they plan to return, or the Mayan gods, so there's something with that. And I think we're living in the time that we might see some of this come. I mean, basically every crazy thing you can think of has been happening lately. Like the world is like the movies 20 years ago now in real life. I mean, it's unbelievable what we're seeing now. And I think it's all this ramp up to 2030. What is 2030? I've been thinking about that a lot lately. Like why 2030? What's so important about this year? And so they obviously have this, our elites here on the planet have this date, this 2030 year as a deadline for something. Why? And why are they rushing to put all this in? Why can't they just, it seemed like they were doing fine in the 80s and 90s when they were behind the scenes. You didn't even know they existed. You couldn't even convince people about this information. And now it's pretty obvious once you see it. So why didn't it work? Why didn't they just continue to be behind the scenes, slowly doing their own thing? They had all their child trafficking rings and all that all hidden, and now everybody knows about it. Well, a lot of people know about it. So it's weird now that they decide to show their face or their hand, and why they're rushing to get to 2030. And I even have postulated that they were sloppy during COVID even, like they pushed it too fast. It's almost like they're in a rush. And why are they in a rush? So those are all questions that none of us have the answers to, but it's important to ask the right questions sometimes.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it does feel like they've hit the accelerator, and there's a overload of conspiracies currently that they just follow one after another. It's actually somewhat hard to keep up with, because obviously you had the Epstein stuff, then you had COVID, then you had aliens through all that as well, and then obviously all the climate change stuff. It's seems like a never-ending list now, whereas it was a bit more contained before. That's actually yeah, it's, I know it's quite worrying, to be fair, to think what is going to go on in 2030.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, the reason I do my podcast, I mean, there are multiple reasons. But I do put out my own show. I do state that it's just to show people what time we're living in, to make sure that people know, like, we shouldn't just be comfortable watching TV every night and just going to work every day, going home and doing that. I mean, that there's more to this world. There always was, but this time we're living in, it's obviously no joke. Like, since 2001, I call this the century of psyops. Just psyop after psyop after psyop. 9/11, countless terrorist shootings, and all these school shootings, and you name it, all kinds of events. Like, we've never been allowed to rest really without some kind of fear event since 2001. I mean, I was alive in the 90s as a teenager, and I don't remember there being that many fear events. It was kind of a big deal when OJ Simpson was being chased by the police on live TV. That was big. Oklahoma City was kind of a big thing, but like, there wasn't a lot going on. And I grew up in the 80s as a kid, so all that, in my life, like, nothing was like fear event after fear event till this century hit. And so that's why I've been calling it century of psyops. I think what's kind of interesting too is just 4 years ago they were screaming to be scared of ISIS in the news, and now look how that's lost its weight. Like, you talk to people about that now, they're not scared of that. They're just scared of whatever the media is trying to scare them into right now. And of course, the media is the mouthpiece of the government.
It almost feels as if it's to desensitize us, but to an extent that they've got this grand finale, which is going to, I don't know, sort of come out in 2030. And because, right, with the fear side of things, you can only scare someone so much before it has to progressively get worse, before people stop being scared altogether. So it worries you, as we've had a worldwide deadly virus. That's what all sorts of films scare you about that. We've got the fear of AI, again, Hollywood scares you on that as well. So what is this grand finale going to be? Because it has to be excessive, right? Or people aren't going to be bothered.
Yeah. I mean, what is this grand finale? I don't know, but I like to come back to this, and it gives us more power, because I never like to bring people into fear and despair, and that's not what I get on the mic for. However, I do like to cover some of these things because it's important. But like, one point that I like to bring up is that they're afraid of us. They're actually afraid of all of us coming together, realizing the lies, and actually acting upon something, because they have to dumb us down so much to keep us where we're at. They have to put food additives to make us stupider, fluoride in our water, in our toothpaste. They have to spray the skies with things that affect us too, frequencies, constantly having us looking at screens, giving us, all kinds of different information that they want us to believe, that's probably, has its own resonant frequency with it to keep us in fear. All these things are to keep humanity from becoming its full potential. And that means they're afraid. They're afraid of us coming together and being sharp-minded and understanding a big picture and understanding what they're doing. And so that always gives me hope that they can't hold humanity in that position too long. And in order to hold them there, they have to constantly be giving us bombardments of and injecting us with stuff too, of things that keep us on that lower frequency. So I think that's a good thing, to know that they're afraid of what we could actually do. And that gives me hope, because then more people can realize that you don't have to be afraid of these people. You shouldn't. Those people that dyed their hair blue because they feel like they're going to get hit by a directed energy weapon. They're coming in fear of these people. We shouldn't be afraid of these people. We should be empowered to know that we're awake in these times and come together. And obviously, you want to do it to where it's peaceful protests, as far as like non-compliance, just peacefully non-complying with them, and they can't do shit once we just say no, enough of us. And that's always been the problem, is there's just not enough of us, and there's a lot of people that are too afraid to actually non-comply. And I think if more people got on that side and just said no, the magical world, no, we would have a change on this planet, and we wouldn't have to worry about their 2030 agenda.
Yeah, it's definitely good to wrap up on the positive side, to keep it positive. It does make me sometimes think that, well, unless these guys that are in charge are immortal, which I honestly don't think that they are, it feels as if, how you get people who own businesses, to put it simple, and they pass their business down to their child, and the child ruins the business. It almost feels as if that's going on with the world. Like they've the ones that were in charge and were keeping it so discreet have sort of moved on to another realm, or they've passed on, or whatever's happened to them's happened, and it feels as if they've passed it down, and then these rich kids have now got the power, and they're just doing everything they can because they don't know any better. They're so disattached to how things actually work.
Right. Yeah. It is an interesting thing. I think David Icke brings this up, that these people die and not see the fruits of their plans. Like, David Rockefeller didn't get to see the New World Order, and neither did George W. Bush Senior, or George Senior, Bush Senior, rather, or many of the people that are in, like a lot of these big elites have died. The Queen of England, all these people, and they never got to see this happen. But why are they so dedicated to the cause? They're not going to see anything. So sometimes it does make you think it's either a demonic kind of dark spiritual thing, or even off world, I don't know, but something that's possessing this group of people, that they have to do this plan, that they have to keep putting their nose to the grind, and constantly controlling and moving humanity in this direction. It's a really weird thing to think that they're that dedicated. I mean, what's this allegiance all about? Like, what are these people, these lower level governors and premiers, like, why would they turn their backs on humanity so much? I mean, are they just useful idiots? Probably. They probably are. But at some point, there's a line where people know much more about this bigger plan, and they're turning their backs on humanity. But that's more important for some reason to be part of this plan than to help humanity. These people have they're possessed by, some people say they're possessed by demons. I mean, I don't know, maybe they are, but there's something so dedicated that's going on here that they're living by, that's either they're scared that their family's going to get killed off or something, or whatever. Blackmailed, probably, but they're dedicated to this plan. And that's really strange to think that they would pass it on to their children. Their children would say, yeah, I want to do this same thing. I mean, in our lives, our kids aren't going to do the same things that we're going to do. I mean, they may not want to do podcasts. They might want to do something totally different and say, no, that's what my dad does. But these people are like dedicated to take on this dream, this new world order. It's crazy.
They must have some level of knowledge that we don't have. Or they must know something that we don't know, which is convincing them and their offspring to push this agenda.
And if you go back to the very beginning stories of Earth, we have these gods with a little g, we have these Anunnaki beings, and they, they mix with humans and made their own like offspring. And you got to wonder if and they put these offspring in charge. You got to wonder if it's the same bloodline that's ran all the way down from ancient times, that they have this plan set in mind, this right to rule. Like what possesses people to think they have the right to rule? I mean, it's kind of a crazy thing to think that, someone could be born into a family that just breeds you just to do that. And so I think it goes back from ancient times, and these are the offspring of these beings from way back, and they have a different mindset than we do. And obviously they do, as I've done a lot of research into satanic ritual abuse, and these families raise their kids in these situations where they basically abuse them and torture them, and it's a weird thing. We wouldn't do that to our kids, but they do. So it's almost like a different species of human that's in charge of regular humans, because they don't ever have humanity's best interest in mind. They always want to control. It's always just like from the very beginning, when Enlil and Enki are arguing about what to do with humanity in the Sumerian texts. It's like they're always still today figuring out who gets access to food, water, healthcare, and all these things, and who's accessible. It's that argument's gone down through society for, since time. So these are a very interesting group of people that think way different than us. That's all I can come up with.
And then when you mention the children, in bringing it back to the Maui fires, when you mentioned the children were off school and there's still thousands of children missing, it sort of makes you think about the satanic rituals that they do. What has happened to these children, and why was school closed?
Right. Yeah, it is interesting, and how they won't let anybody in to the site still today to, check
you
it
can't
out.
go into it right now.
No. And there was a 12-mile media ban around there, so like no reporters could get in. Not that we trust many reporters anyway these days, but it's very interesting that people can't even go to their houses. And the supplies that people like, Hawaii has one thing about Hawaii is we have aloha. It's a spirit of giving and helping others. So a lot of people have put together food packages and cargoes and stuff for these people to help them out. FEMA, who's in charge, who's the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, won't allow other people's supplies. They only allow theirs. So they have too much control. They're just like the WHO, they have too much control, and they can seize land in these kind of emergency situations and stuff like that. So yeah, people haven't even been able to get it's been very hard to get these people cargo of goods that they need, because FEMA has control of the whole area.
Right. So this just shows that it's got suspicious pre-fire, during the fire, and then now the aftermath of the fire.
Yeah. The aftermath too. And I guess one thing I heard someone talk about, and I do maybe agree with this, is smart meters might have something to do with fire. You guys have smart meters in the UK? I think you do.
Yeah.
So they can control these automatically. Now, let's say that they wanted, if they could make a fire happen, these things have a beam of energy that goes 30 feet from the meter itself. So you got to wonder if this stuff could be controlled from the ground too, possibly even 5G antennas. The antennas that are inside of our cell phone towers and stuff like that are called phased array antennas, and they're steerable. You can direct energy with them. So these things are weapons too. Again, DARPA is the ones who invented these kind of things. So they have dual uses, some of these things. So you got to wonder if maybe the fires could have been, instead of direct energy weapons, I mean, it's just as easy to theorize it could be smart meters or something more locally that caused these fires too. We just don't know. But everything's suspicious, from the pre-fire to the reaction to what's still going on today is crazy. And there's really, like, we're getting so little information yet. There's a nearby island called Lanai. It's maybe 45 minutes from Maui by ferry, and I've read, and I don't know this to be positive, but 185 bodies have turned up over there. And so the media is still telling us they've only found, like, recovered like 100 and some bodies. That's it, when there's like thousands unaccounted for. So, why are they not telling us all this? It's just, there's so much cover up here.
Yeah, it is super suspicious. This DARPA thing is weird because I guess you've heard about sort of people that invent stuff now. Because there was that guy that invented, was it a car that ran on water, and he suspiciously died. So it seems like we're at a state where no one's allowed to invent anything now. It has to pass through a sort of governing body before it's allowed out there. They have full control over anything that gets created on this earth, basically.
That's right. They do.
Also, you mentioned DARPA, I think, in the last podcast. They did the prediction of world population in 2025. Was it DARPA?
Oh, yeah. That's actually not DARPA. That was I forget the name of it now. Deagle.com.
Oh yeah, Deagle.
Yeah, Deagle.com is a I guess they basically prepare supplies for every year for military personnel. Their logistics is what they are. And so anyway, they predicted massive population drops by like 2025. So from here to 2025, I mean, I don't know what we're looking at. I am still covering on my own podcast the amount of deaths that have happened from these shots, and they're still happening. If you look, they're there. A lot of people are still dying suddenly. People that are totally healthy, young, just dropping dead. Still, celebrities even. Was it? I think Sinead O'Connor died recently. She was 56, not real young, but still, like, they didn't tell what she died of, and a lot of people that are dying. So if this trend continues, I mean, hopefully that's wrong. I don't want to be right about this, but it is possible that a combination of things like that, and maybe some wars, maybe some more fires, I don't know, could drop our population a lot. Hopefully not, but it is something to be at least look at and consider. I don't know, but Deagle.com isn't like saying we're going to have a mass population drop. It's just showing through their preparation for.
I don't think it's on the website anymore, is it?
Yeah, they took it off. Yeah,
try to find it.
That's interesting too. Yeah,
archives. I also listened to the podcast you recommended. I forgot what it's called.
I can't remember what I recommended. Was it where I heard this information from?
Yeah.
Macroaggressions with Charlie Robinson.
Yeah, that's it. That's the one.
Yeah. You should have him on. That guy's good. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The dark podcast.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. And believe me, I don't like talking about all this dark information either, all the time. But like I say, it's just important for people to understand the time we're in, so we're prepared for whatever, because it's not time to be asleep. That's for sure.
Yeah, 100%.
That is true.
Yeah.
And yeah, with whatever's going to be happening in 2030, then we've got 7 years to get as much people up to date with what's going on as possible, which is plenty of time.
I think people are waking up though.
Yeah, to certain degrees.
I don't know if you've heard about ULEZ in the UK, well, in London specifically.
What is it called?
ULEZ.
ULES.
It's a ski or I don't know how to call it. It's a regulation scheme.
It's a sort of tax, right?
It's like a tax. Basically, it started in inner London, which is like the main city of London, and you're not allowed to bring any polluting cars in. So I think they're saying diesels that are pre 2015. But then he's expanded it out to wider London, and then he's expanded it out to even like the whole of Greater London. But so if you want to drive into this area now and you've got a diesel, which a lot of workmen and tradesmen, they drive diesel vans, so they can't go about their day-to-day activities without having to pay. I think it's 15 or 20 pounds a day to enter the area.
I heard about this. Yeah.
So a lot of people are pushing back now and going around and cutting the cameras down. A lot of people are getting fines through the post, just not paying it. So the more people that say no to it, the more likely it's going to get pulled away, which is what you were saying before. We need people to say no.
Yeah. Yep. I think that's it. I mean, and that's good. And I think that there's these 15-minute cities. You guys have in Oxford or something,
Yeah.
right? Or yeah, a lot of people, no one's obeying that either. I've heard, and that's good. And that's what we need to do is disobey. There's always been a rebel inside me that's said, let's get this started. Let's stop obeying these guys. And I think it's time. And I think it's time for everybody also to put the line in the sand and say, everybody needs to be starting to question, where should I place the line in the sand? Like, where does this belong? Are we going to let it get to cashless society, or are we not? And that's something that's happening fast too, that we should be paying attention to. I mean, actually, when I was over in London last year, because I'm international, I took out cash because every time I do a transaction with my card, I have a conversion fee. So I'm like, well, smarter to take out cash. I was in central London trying to get a bottle of water because I was thirsty. And everywhere I went, didn't take cash. So it was this horrible journey I went on, place to place. Do you take cash? No, not since COVID. So that kind of thing. Like, people need to just put some money down and say, here's this legal tender. I don't care if you don't take cash. This is I'm paying for it. I'm not ripping you off. People need to put their line in the sand in whatever form that says to them, or whatever. They need to put their line in the sand to say, okay, this is as far as I'm going to let this happen. And I think everybody needs to start really having that conversation. Like, where is that line? Like, are we just going to continue to let them push and push, or are we just going to say, let's stop it right here? And I think we have to think like that. It's important because next thing you know, we won't have cash, and then that's less freedom. And I mean, now in our Whole Foods here, which is like a grocery store for organic foods, they have these palm scanners where you put your palm and it reads your palm. I'm like, whoa, this just came in last week. I put it on my Instagram, and yeah, it's like just like that. Like, whoa, this is fast coming in. So people need to not use those, and they won't stay.
Wait, what does it read? Does it read the print of your palm, or?
Yeah, it's biometric scan of your palm.
Right.
Yeah, so that's how you pay now.
That's worrying.
Yeah.
What?
Mm-hmm. Oh, when I was in Australia, same thing. Very little cash. A lot of places, oh, we've gone cashless since COVID. I'm like, why? And they don't know. They don't have an answer. They just work there. But it's just like, yeah, it's worrying. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's just one of the things in COVID was money is what is causing the infection to, or the virus to spread, was the money. Yeah, and they are ramping that up again too right now. So I don't think people are going to buy it, though. That's my thinking. I don't know about you guys, but they're ramping up. Oh, cases are up with this new variant, but I don't think people want to go back to wearing masks again and locking down again. I don't see it happening. Like, it worked the first time because they'd never seen it before, but I don't think it's going to go back to that again. I think a lot of people have woken up from either seeing the bullshit while it was happening,
or getting a shot and having bad reaction to it, and or just saying, well, what did I even do all that for? I still got COVID. So I think now they're not going to be able to carry that on much longer. I'd be very surprised if they did.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it for the normies, is that they're just going to be sort of with that mindset of, well, why am I going to do that again? Like, we've just been through all of that, and if it didn't work that time, if it's come back, then what's the point in this? But yeah, they're saying what lockdowns are coming back. Is it December? They said.
Is that what they said?
Well,
that's what Alex Jones said, I think.
Okay. Well, he might have some. He has a pretty good track record most of the time, but I just don't see them doing it. I don't see enough people going, yeah, let's do that again. That really worked last time. It never worked the first time, so why would they just want to do it again? And I think even if someone totally believed the narrative, they didn't like it, so I don't think they're going to want to do it. Even if they're the most COVIDian of COVIDians, they're probably not going to want to be locked down again. I don't know. Actually, these people are crazy. They're still wearing double masks. Here they never really stopped. It's crazy. A lot of people still wear their masks everywhere.
Yeah, when I see people wearing a mask outside, I'm thinking, what the hell is going on?
The other day, I kind of give them a hard time. It's just the Joker in me, but I saw this lady running with a mask on, and so I rolled down my window and I laughed at her. And I pointed at her, and that's all I could do. But I'm just like, these people need to be kind of ridiculed at this point. I mean, it's like, seriously, you're not breathing fresh air, or you're stuck in your car alone with your mask on. I mean, that's
they're the funny ones when they're sat in the car.
Yeah, it's like crazy. It's like, seriously, it never worked, and you're restricting your airflow, and you're breathing in your nanocarbons. That can't be good, and bad breath, and it's gross. It's like, and then these people are the same people that are so into the environmental movement, yet how many masks do I see littered everywhere? They're like the worst litter that you can find, even in the ocean. It's like, ew, go snorkeling and find someone's mask at the bottom of the sea.
Yeah, I do think a large number, because when it came around the first time, the number was crazy large on how many people obeyed. I still think that number is very high, but I think if they were to bring it back again, and this could be within their plans, it's at a point now where it's sort of ultimate division for them. If they were to bring it back now, it would be quite close to a 50-50 split of, in my opinion, of people that believe it and people that are a bit skeptical about it at this point. So for them to bring it back now will just cause, you think there were arguments and outrage the first time. I think it'll be a lot different if it was to come back this time.
I think you're right.
There's people already on Twitter that I've seen saying, like, oh, a lot of people aren't going to wear masks. Like, this whole thing's going to get 10 times worse. People are going to die. It's just like a repeat of what they were saying in 2020 and 2021 all over again. And they're saying it now, when how much information has come up, how much information's there where you can read and find out what the hell actually happened. And these people are still like blindsided by it.
I kind of think they're doing this too. Maybe they know that they're not going to succeed with it, but they're actually just getting everybody to take more booster shots that didn't get sold, that didn't get used the first time, scaring people into getting more shots. Because I think I read that they're making a new variant shot for this now, and that's more money for big pharma. So if they can get another cash grab, why not? I'm sure that there's some incentives like that too that aren't even necessarily as diabolical as killing off everyone, as much as just actually just getting more money for their product.
And at the same time too, they could learn from their mistakes of what they did wrong in the first one. I know I don't know how it was in the other countries, but well, I kind of do know. But the COVID passports that they did in the UK were a complete flop. So there's things like that that they'll probably try and do better this time. I'm going to guess. Yeah, I do. I can see it coming back definitely with the hype. And bear in mind, like everyone's back to work and back to normal now. Everyone just resorts back to headline reading again. No one reads into stuff. They'll just see a notification on their phone and say, "Oh my god, there's a new variant," or the headlines, I guess, keep numbers in there, number of deaths in there a lot. So that's all they're going to see, and the state of panic that will come in will just come in.
Yeah. I mean, and a lot of stuff's been admitted since too, like that masks don't work by the actual CDC, or, it's like, but they never read those articles or something, I guess, because obviously they just skim read. And a lot of people do. You don't have a lot of time to read all these articles, but I think if you want to look out for the best of yourself, it's important to actually read what they're saying, because a lot of times the headline's bad and you read it and it's not as bad, but they know people go by headlines these days. People have short attention spans on purpose. They did that on purpose. They did a lot of this on purpose to get everybody a phone. It was always a plan. I knew way back in the early 2000s when they started making phones in like nice bright colors for kids and stuff. I go, they want everybody to have a phone. And sure enough, they did. And it's like they were designed to read QR codes. They want us to be tracked by these things. You can't do life without a phone. Basically, everywhere you go, you have to have this device. And they put it in on purpose. And again, all from DARPA. The shots, your phone, your QR code, all from DARPA. So it's all the same control group behind the scenes. We're giving you their inventions which are actually weapons at the same time.
And on top of it as well, with it coming back, you've got the sheep mentality. You might have a lot of people who right now would say, "I'm not going to wear a mask. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that." Give them 3 weeks of everyone around them doing that and putting pressure on them to do that. I guarantee majority of these sort of sheep will just say, "Oh, do you know what? It's not worth the hassle. Let me just do it."
Yeah. And a lot of people go along to get along. And it's part of our tribal mentality of being, part of the tribe. We don't want to be ostracized from the tribe. Let's just, a lot of people don't want to be ridiculed or labeled as abnormal. And that's why too, I think a lot of people don't go into this conspiracy realm, even if they believe it in their head a bit, because they don't want to be labeled as one of those people. And I can see that from a standpoint, but it's like they really just have to get over the fear. People have to stop being afraid of what people think, because what people think is insane anyway. The general public's insane anyway, and have been for a while. The level of sanity has in the general public and the normies, or whatever you want to call them, has gone to heights that are just unimaginable. We don't even know what a woman or a man is anymore. I mean, it's like people choose their kid's gender now instead, and like that's considered normal. Like that's where we're at. So it's time for people to stop worrying about being normal, because normal's crazy.
Yeah, that is true.
All right.
Yeah.
Should we wrap it up?
Yeah.
It's been great.
It's been really good. Cheers for coming out, Luemas.
Yeah, I like working with you guys. Great talking with you here. There's always a lot to talk about in this crazy world, isn't there?
Yeah, it was only, how many months ago did we last speak?
What was that?
How many months ago was our last podcast? Like 2 months ago, 3 months ago?
I don't know. June?
It feels like
June
feels like a lot's happened since then.
Yeah, it has. May, June. Yeah, I kind of don't remember, to be honest.
I think it might have been June.
2 months ago.
Only 2 months ago. Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, but yeah, look how much has happened since just then.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
7th of July.
7th of July.
Oh,
Yeah.
2 months ago. Yeah.
Wow. But
Well, yeah, it's and really another 2 months from now, who knows?
yeah.
I was just thinking we'll probably have to top this one up again with
Yeah.
the next set of news.
Yeah.
We'll have to check in quite regularly until 2030. We could do a bit of a 2030 countdown, I guess.
Yeah. We'll see what happens. It really just matters how many people decide to comply, and it is a barometer when you see a video like a YouTube video or something. Well, actually, they took away the feature now, didn't they? But you basically see something and it's all thumb down because people are like, fuck this, we're not doing this. It's always encouraging to see that. So it's kind of hard to gauge how much the population really thinks about not obeying all this. But I think it's more than we realize nowadays. And there are varying degrees of what people call awakened, but there are a lot of people that are, at least for the very minimum, fed up with the way shit is going, and they, I think this time, are not going to comply with the many things coming. I mean, look how many people are like dismissing global warming. I think it's actually crashing down for them in a lot of ways. At least I'm hoping.
Yeah, there's a lot more. Before the pandemic, I think the majority of people believed in climate change and global warming. Now, I would say a lot more people, I can't put a figure on it, but I know a lot more people are questioning the narrative.
Yeah, I think so. I think the weather weapons and our direct energy weapons or whatever, it's gotten to become more of a popular topic now, and less people, because now the people that came from the COVID times and realized they're being lied to are noticing that the same people pushing that are pushing the climate change, and they're starting to go, well, wait a minute, that's a lie too. So it's only done them a disservice, really, because they're pushing any agenda these people are pushing. People are like, no, not going to go with that. So I think people are waking up to these agendas slowly, for sure.
Can't hear you, Cam.
As we already said as well, stuff is going faster and faster, so there's just more opportunity for people to wake up the more things fly.
I think so. And I'm glad because I'm kind of tired of being alone all these years. Just talking to people. I mean, that you had so many years, at least in my life, where I couldn't tell my family this information. I couldn't tell really anybody just randomly on the streets. So that's why I started a podcast over 10 years ago. And it was kind of like a way for me to vomit all this information out, because it's got to go somewhere. I can't just keep it inside. And so, and now I think it's coming to use more. I think so.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you.
Cheers, Luemas.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll catch you next time.
All right. Yeah.
Bye, guys.
Bye.